Hello, this is City Administrator Andrew Kita. I'm utilizing our YouTube channel to make a presentation to the citizens for them to view, discussing the cash financial situation with the city and helping people really get an understanding of where the city's liquid cash position is. I can assure you that we're in much better position than we were a few years ago, and I'll be able to give you some explanation as to how we've ended up where we're at. So we'll start off with a discussion about revenues. This is a presentation here. This chart shows the general fund property tax revenues that come in to the city. You can see in 2015 we were about 1.2 million, and we've seen some increase. We've had growth going on in the community, so that's a good thing. And there in 2021, we're at an all-time high for property tax revenues coming in. We've lowered the property tax levy for the year. Council voted to do that for this upcoming year. Property valuations went up very high, and the city was able to lower its levy to offset some of those increased costs because there really wasn't a need for that much money to be coming in to continue to have our operations. So the tax levy was dropped from $12.55 to $12.35, and we believe that the property valuations will go up again next year because the county assessment was only partially completed by the end of the calendar year, and we expect that that number will go up again, and the city will be able to address the tax levy and most likely lower the tax levy the following year. LOST stands for local option sales tax. That's sales tax revenue that comes in not just from the city of Camanche sales tax revenue, but also comes from the Clinton areas. There's a 1% local option sales tax. We get 15% of that 1% local option sales tax. So when sales go on in Clinton, it benefits the city of Camanche. And this also includes utility bills and things of that nature, anything that collects sales tax. It also goes on your internet charges as well. So the more people spend on the internet, the more revenue it is for the city of Camanche. You can see in 2021 that there was a large jump. That was the federal government handing out money, subsidizing what they proposed was lost revenue from expenditures or consumerism happening during COVID. We really didn't see that, but we certainly didn't turn down the money. Here's the ambulance revenues. From 2015, you can see those rates were pretty steady. In 2019, we decided to look at what our charges for ambulance services was, and it was a little more than half of what the insurance companies actually pay. So we adjusted our rates to be what the insurance companies actually pay, and that brought in a lot more revenue. So when you get to 2021, we filed for this program called Gemt, and what that does is it helps subsidize Medicare and Medicaid runs, which were making up a large portion of our functions as an ambulance service. So we have to give 40% of that back to the state, but we get 60% of that, and you can see now our revenues are substantial for the ambulance service, ambulance paramedic service. And this is one of the revenue sources which allowed us to hire 2 additional paramedic firefighters, and now we have a staff of 5 over there, and we have 24-hour coverage. So that's worked out fairly well. That's how we're able to do that without raising taxes. Backfill is important. This was a change that the state government made when they adjusted rates for commercial and industrial property taxes. They lowered them to residential rates, and it was significant impact to the municipalities, and they promised to backfill those lost monies, and they've been doing that, and now we're told over the next 5 years they will make that go away, reducing it by 20% every year, the payments to us as a municipality. What they're going to do with that money is use it to fund mental health. So we will have to figure out a way to compensate for that loss of $60,000 in revenue. Cable franchise fee, it looks like it's going up, down, up, but it's a swing of $6,000. And that's franchise fee on your cable bill or internet bill, I suspect it's going up because a lot more people in 2021 signed up with MediaCom. So, electric franchise, you see in 2020 we enacted it. We didn't get a full year. That was 1%. And that replaces your local option sales tax 1% on your electric bill. So no one saw a change in their electric bill from that. In 2021, the city of Clinton enacted a franchise fee, so the local option sales tax for their electricity was gone, and we figured we should raise ours 1%. That made up the loss, anticipated loss of $45,000 to the local option sales tax revenue. So we balanced that out so that wouldn't impact the city budget. The gas franchise fee, you can see, is 2020 again was not a full year of the franchise fee. 2021 was, and that will stay consistent probably for the next 4 or 5 years, and unless they change. That again is also a 1% fee on your gas bill. It replaces the 1% local option sales tax, so your gas bill has not changed because of that. Building permit fees, you can see that the building permit fees have gone up significantly in the last 4 years. There's a lot more building going on, and you see this COVID spike. There were a lot of people who took out building permits, and that increased that revenue from that. The cemetery fees, there's good and bad here. We had less money in revenues in the cemetery. The two things that are good is one, not as many people were dying, and we get revenue coming in from paying for grave openings. So that also means we weren't paying out money for grave openings too. So that's fine, and it's not really that much of a loss to the cemetery. General fund cash on hand. You can see back in 2015 we ended the fiscal year with about $300,000, close to that. That's not a great number. A rule of thumb is you should have 6 months worth of operating cash in your general fund cash at the end of the year, because you don't get any property tax revenue until November. So you got to kind of stretch those general fund cash dollars out to be able to make payroll and pay for things that you need to pay for between June 30th and November. There's other general fund money that's coming in, but you still want to be able to stretch that out so you have a fair amount of operating cash or liquid cash to be able to make payroll and things of that nature. So you can see in 2016, this was in June 30th of 2016, we were down to $85,000. A lot of that expenditure went towards the community center. And so when I arrived here in the fall of 2016, one of the first things we did was go out for bond, a reverse referendum for $400,000 for the community center, because we would have ended the year negative, and you don't want to end the year negative in your general fund cash on hand. So we ended that year plus $175,000 around there, and you can see we had an increase in general fund cash on hand in 2018. 2019 and 2020 were decreases in cash on hand, understanding that we spent a lot of money out of pocket for flood damage and the derecho cleanup, and we received those revenues back during 2021 from FEMA requests, and we were continuing a trend upward. So now in 2021, we were close to $300,000 at the end, and understand that we did spend $90,000 to buy a parcel of land to make sure 2 roads go through and land can be subdivided properly by the 2 Eden subdivisions. So if we had not done that, we would have been much closer to $400,000 in the general fund cash, which is good. We probably should be somewhere between around $750,000 to $800,000. That would mean we're actually healthy. Road use fund. This comes from gasoline tax you pay at the pump. It gets collected by the state and distributed based on your population and linear mileage of street. And you could see we had, in 2018, we had a substantial amount of money in there, and we did a lot of roads. In 2019, 2020, we didn't do too much. And in 2021, we would have been about the same level as 2020, except that Phase 2 of the Street Improvement Plan didn't get completed until after June 30th, so that'll come out of this fiscal year. Plus, we're pulling up Phase 3. I expect 2022 fiscal year to end, at about the same dollar amount as 2020. We want to keep that somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000, just in case something comes up and you need access to that money. But again, this is specific for road use. We can't use it for anything else. It's why it's called a restricted fund. The insurance fund is money we set aside to be able to handle insurance costs or fluctuations in the market for our employees and their health insurance. And you can see we've been decreasing that because it was quite substantial. We've been participating in high deductible plans and making HSA contributions. And you can see now we've devised a different plan moving forward to go with an even higher deductible plan with the city self-insuring the back end of the deductible. And that's worked out in our favor. It will allow us to continue to offer those benefits to our employees without much struggle. Here's the library fund. You see in 2018 to 2019 they did do a big project where they redid all the carpeting. And 2020 their library fund increased back up again because they received grant money for some of that carpeting work, plus they're setting money aside. So pretty fair. $40,000 is a good number for them to be at. Cemetery fund, you see a small decrease this year over the last year. They did spend money on a new mower, so that's fairly healthy. It's not an extremely significant amount of money in the grand scheme of things for the city budget. The garbage fund, you can see, was increasing a lot through 2019. It was substantial, and then it starts to go back down in 2021. We're back at about $20,000 at the end of the year, and that's fine. We don't have a lot of capital outlay for that fund, so we don't really want to carry a large balance at the end of the year. One of the reasons we built up to that balance is because we were collecting to pay the head tax at the landfill, and the landfill eliminated the head tax. So what we decided to do was, instead of lowering the bill, we just kept the bill what it was, and as those costs for the garbage collection started to increase, we didn't increase the bill until we absolutely had to. So we're on pace to be pretty even with the garbage fund. I think there was another 25-cent a month increase, and it was a 25-cent a month increase last year. So, and there hadn't been any increases since, I think, 2016. So all in all, not too bad. Here's your water fund. There was an increase that was voted in the summer of 2016. You can see that fund increased greatly through 2019. In 2020, we pulled some funds out to help repair the sewer fund. We loaned money, and then there was also some of the money paid back for the purchase of water meters. Back in 2012, the council decided to pay for all of the water meters out of the sewer fund because the sewer fund had money in it and the water fund did not. And that wasn't the best way to do it. So we gave half of that money from the water fund back to the sewer fund, and that balanced everything out. And you can see in 2021, the sewer fund is back on the rise, or water fund is back on the rise again. And I think we're going to work on something here soon with balancing out, increasing the sewer user fee and lowering the water user fee. So you won't see a change in your bill, but it's going to shift some of those revenues to the sewer fund and level off the water fund, and it should work out okay. And here's that sewer fund. You can see in 2015 it had about $60,000 in it. By 2016 it was already negative. 2017 negative. 2018 we enacted the debt service fee, and that kind of stopped the bleeding and reversed the trend to 2019. In 2020 we had enough money coming in from the debt service fee plus the loan and the payback of money for the water meters, put the sewer fund back healthy again. In 2021 it's declining in the wrong direction, so we believe that offsetting those user fees will eventually even things out for the water fund and help regain money into the sewer fund. This LMI fund is interesting. This comes from TIF and Housing Development. That stands for Low to Moderate Income. This will be a program coming out here soon where there will be loans being able to be made to households who qualify for low to moderate income to do home improvements, and there'll be forgivable loans. More to come on that project soon. Here's your Parks Fund. This is their cash fund. And you can see in 2017, 2018, 2019, they increased, and that money comes from deposits made into their fund from their general fund monies that they get. There's always transfers going into those spare funds for the purchase of equipment and whatnot. And you see in 2020 there was a significant amount of money transferred over to their fund, and in 2021 that decreased greatly, and that's because they purchased that new playground equipment, and that's where most of that money comes from. Some of it came from the regular spending money that they're allocated through tax funds. Some of it came from their savings accounts. And at this point, we're going to have a little discussion about how fund accounting works, because there's been some confusion about the parks funds. So I tried to make this presentation on fund accounting and how that really works. So here is your parks budget for the fiscal year, whatever fiscal year you're in. You have general funds that are allocated through taxes, and the city council makes a determination on how much that is based on how much the parks is asking for. It's allocated every year based on their request and whether or not council wants to fund all of those projects. They also have their savings accounts, which we just showed you in the previous slide, and they also have a CD where they can store money at that tends to get a little bit better interest rate, but not so much here lately. They have it set up when CD interest rates are 2.5% or 3%, and they were doing fine to make them extra money. But now they're not earning that much money, so having a CD is getting to the point where it's kind of pointless. But they do have their cash savings. So if they're going to do a big project, there's your budget transfer out of your fiscal year money into your cash savings for the park department. If they're going to do a big project, they put in for a transfer out, and it's part of the budget process, so that it's spendable for them. Right? This is typical budget allocation. Parks and Rec is funded with tax dollars and with savings. The cash account and CD are linked, so there is a place to hold money for expenditures when the CD matures. So if you're going to have a project coming up in April and your CD matures in January, you want to be able to peel out the right amount of money out of your CD for the necessary project and put it in your cash account, and then the CD gets renewed at the slightly better interest rate than your checking account. So what happens at the end of the year? Well, the same funds still exist. At the end of the year, unspent line items in the general fund go back, for the parks budget, go back to the general fund where they came, and they have to, because you can't transfer out more money than you said you were going to. There's your transfer out. That's still a set dollar amount, and it's $5,000 for the parks department. The city's not able to transfer out $12,000 because they have their $5,000 transfer and there was $7,000 in their equipment line item that they didn't spend. That has to be reported to the state and reported to the taxpayers that we're willing to transfer out more money than we originally said, and that can only happen through a budget amendment, and your last opportunity to amend the budget is the end of May in that fiscal year, so there's no way to legally do that. So if a project that they've said they're going to transfer money for out of their cash account, if the project doesn't happen, the transfer never happens, and that money stays in their cash. So you can always transfer out less money than you said you were going to. You can never transfer out more money than you said you were going to. And that's the rule of thumb. So if cash funds are not used for the budgeted projects, then the transfer does not happen. Therefore, the funds remain in the cash account or the CD. Funds allocated through the general fund tax that do not get used are swept back into the general fund. This is done for every department. So the police department, fire department, ambulance, library, if they don't spend those line items, those monies come from general fund cash. They go back to general fund cash. The city cannot transfer the remaining unspent funds to the departments because it cannot transfer more than what it said it would through the budget and amendment process. The last chance to amend is the last meeting in May, and there is no way to know what that dollar amount would be. So that is the lesson on fund accounting. So let's go back to the parks fund again. You can see there was $35,000 decrease that was for the playground. The remainder of expenses for that playground equipment came from the normally budget equipment money from taxes plus no transfer into cash reserve. So in that line where we say we transfer $5,000 out to their cash account, we put 0 down because we knew they were going to be spending more money for playground equipment for the year. So we increased their equipment line by that $5,000 rather than transferring that money out, because we just have to transfer that money back in. So that's how that works. So let's go to total cash liquidity. You can see at our low point in 2016, we were below $800,000 in cash liquidity. As of today, we are a little over 1.6 million. And again, you see those decreases in cash liquidity in 2019 and 2020 because we had some expenses with the flood and derecho. This is an overall view of how each department did. In the far right-hand column, you'll see how far in we came in under budget, which was good. And that shows that, we say things like, if you don't spend the money, you're going to lose the money. It's going to get swept back into the general fund. We're very fortunate to have department heads who don't take the approach of, well, I have this much money left to spend at the end of the year. I'm going to go on a spending spree and use what I have. We don't make it a practice to lower their budget allocations because they're not spending money. We typically give them the same budget dollar amounts and line items unless they have some special project that they've pre-planned for and have presented to council for something that they're going to need in a year where they're going to need a little bit more funding. So that's where that stands. That's the end of this presentation, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you're certainly able to contact my office. Even though we're still under construction, our phones still work most of the time. And that number is 563-259-8342. Or you can email me at akida@comancheia.org. And I thank you for your time, and have a great Comanche day.